The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast series, Marketing with Purpose, where we're exploring how brands can grow with clarity, emotional resonance, and intentionality. I'm Sakach, joined by Tullio, Siragusa, and Liwski. Hey, guys.
Good to see you again, Steven.
Yeah. So today we're diving into something that sounds basic, but trips up even experienced marketing teams. That's the difference between mission, vision, and purpose. These three words are kind of often used interchangeably, but they can serve very different roles when it comes to brand alignment and leadership, and most importantly, marketing clarity.
For sure. And hey, if any of you out there, disagree, by all means, shoot us a comment. We'd love to, have a deeper conversation out. But why don't we start off really with the why, right? It's if your team is confused about your mission, vision, and purpose, certainly your customers will feel that confusion in your marketing 10x, and that's that happens really when you struggle to resonate with that organization. So the misalignment at the top leads to messaging that just kind of feels generic, or it's inconsistent, or it's just really out of touch with the way your target audience is feeling. And when the three elements all come together and they're clear, and then you've clearly differentiated yourself with those, what happens to your brand is it becomes completely magnetic, right? It's no longer this broadcasting thing that is annoying that people want to shut off, but it's much like a magnet, right? Everything really starts to feel connected, and you start to connect with your audience.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. This is not just a branding exercise. A lot of organizations will, let's drum up a purpose as like a branding exercise. This is not just about that. Okay. It's actually about having a North Star that not only guides your tone, your campaigns, your hiring decision, even your product development, but guides everything you do as a business. So this is important, especially when it comes to purpose, in identifying what you stand for as a business, what's going to be outliving the current tech hype, for example. So its purpose is your center. Mission is really your engine, like how you're going to get there. And the vision is your horizon, right? So, and the mission and the vision can change, but often the purpose does not. Right. So the North Star doesn't change. It's fixed. But the engine you use to get to that North Star, your mission or the horizon, because there's different horizons to get there, that can change and evolve as well. So that's a really critical, important thing to distinguish. And as Mike said, if you don't agree, comment, come talk to us. We'll even have you on the show, and maybe we can talk about it further.
I think one of our recent guests said this best when talking about like the clarity of these things for your personal growth, but it's same for a company. Is it gets you to your hell yes and your hell no really much faster. So Mike, let's break down purpose, your why.
Yeah, let's start there for sure. So your purpose, right? It's quite simply the reason for being, right? Why you exist. It's why your company, came to be beyond just, making money and profits. It's really that deeply emotional, deeply human component. And it's the most timeless, as Tullio brought out, of the three, purpose, vision, and mission. Because even if your products evolve or you enter different markets, your purpose should still always hold true. I'll give you just an example, right? To democratize financial confidence, right? That's not tied to any single product, but really to democratize financial confidence is about impact. And maybe, next, Tullio, why don't we talk about mission, as you mentioned, right? Your what and the how.
Yes, absolutely. And I think this is so important too. I want to highlight why many companies actually kind of limit themselves when they don't get the purpose right, and they'll focus more on the mission. And just imagine it like this. If you could be a manufacturer of cars, so let's say you're GM and you say, what do you do? We make cars. Well, that might be what's needed today. But maybe in the future, something else will be needed, a hovercraft or something else, right? But whereas if you're in the business of connecting people, that could evolve to many different products, right? So the mission is what and how. And your mission is what you do every day to fulfill your purpose. And it could be different. Right now, if you manufacture cars and your purpose is to connect people, well, one way to connect people is by making cars that you could drive to someone else's house or business. So it's got to be action focused, and think of it like an operational engine. That's why I'm using the example of cars, right? We build, example could be, we build digital banking tools that empower young adults to manage money on their own terms. That's the mission. It moves you forward. Now let's talk about vision, which is your where.
Yeah, this is your where. This is where you're headed, right? So it's aspirational. It paints a picture of the future you're trying to create. And so going along with our example we've been using, that might be, a world where every person feels financially free and capable. So that's vision. It's directional and it inspires.
Perfect, right? So now that we've talked about these, the most common mistake, what is it? Well, blending all three into one big statement. So for example, we aim to empower people with innovation to drive global change. That doesn't tell me why.
I feel like I've read this 100 times. Websites.
Right there with you, right? It doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't say like why they exist, what you do, or where we're going at the end of this journey, right? It sounds like a tagline generated by a committee or some large language model that knows nothing about you.
Exactly. Okay, so the other pitfalls, like in creating purpose statement that sound nice, but no one on the team can actually remember them, and it's not really felt and used. It's not serving you. It's just performative, like a nice thing to say, like we're here to change the world, but you're not really doing anything to change the world. So that's often a big mistake too. Is a purpose statement is kind of performative, just sounds nice, but nobody remembers it.
You can't remember. We aim to something, empower people. What was it, Mike? It's not rolling off the tongue again the second time through. So
Can you remember it?
Purpose should be something you're marketing.
I don't even remember what Mike just said 2 minutes ago.
Yeah. I mean, purpose should be something your marketing team can use as a filter really for every campaign. So if a message doesn't align with your purpose, it's a no. And maybe even, like I said earlier, a hell no, right? That's what I'm talking about. Getting to that hell yes, hell no. You'll know it when you hear it because it's just going to ring true and align with your overall purpose. So that's how brands stay consistent, especially as they scale. When you've got things going on in a whole bunch of different directions, you really need that North Star. So let's talk a little bit about how to do this. We don't want that tagline that sounded like is generated by a committee of 10 people that got it watered down and to where it really meant nothing. Let's talk about how we do this with aiCMO. So one of the key things in there, the first thing you really want to do is go in there is work on the purpose tool that kind of helps you build one if you don't already have one, or you can type in one if you've already got yours. But it really goes through this process with you to help build this purpose that becomes one of the foundations then from all the marketing that you're doing going forward.
Yeah. It's interesting, Steve. I've even played around with aiCMO for companies that do have a purpose, just to see if that's the right purpose, or if it'll come back with something, because research changes, capabilities change, and so that's been actually quite interesting. But it's really not about automation, right? It's really about making sure that we have alignment at scale. And so what aiCMO helps with is to craft, content that reflects your purpose across every single channel, so that you're not just, consistent, right? But that really you're staying connected, because that purpose is at the core, or at one of the foundational pieces that goes into all the marketing that it produces for you.
And just something to keep in mind. Let's say you've got a good content, good messaging strategy, and your CMO decides they're going to go do a startup and be the CEO of a startup. Now they leave, and with them goes a few members of the team. Now you bring in a new CMO and a new team, and the message just doesn't land right anymore. It's different because it's different people. That's a huge risk to a brand, right? So what this allows you to do is to scale without dilution, right? Even as different writers, designers, or contractors get involved, let's say you have to change your agency, whatever, right? With the aiCMO system, it keeps your messaging aligned with your deeper intent. So nothing gets lost, regardless of any changes you do with your team or your vendor dynamics. And that's like an insurance policy if you want to make sure your brand stays consistent in the marketplace.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of talking about at the very beginning, is really defining, like we said, you define these areas. Your purpose is your why, your mission is your what and how, and your vision is your where. And so when these are all clear, this is how you get that real connection with your customers and employees. So like Tullio said, if you're going through changes and things like that, you're able to keep consistent when you've got those items very clearly defined about your business. Otherwise, you're going to be all over the place, which is what we see half the time, right? When we're looking at stuff.
Steven, I'll just add to that real quick before you jump.
Yeah.
That this is going to affect lifetime value, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, like you said, it's going to connect you with the audience that is your audience. So you're not going to get a bunch of tire kickers that are going to, initially cost you money, right? So you're going to get in front of the right individuals early on, and you're going to stay connected with them, again, affecting lifetime value.
Yeah, this is really, it's process of kind of fine tuning your resonance, right, with people. And once you're going through that process and you finally know what kind of rings true, you don't want to, jump away from it for the next, shiny object that you see in your marketing. You can still stay true to your core. Yeah.
And it's not depending on whether the person's a good prompt engineer or not. There's a consistency there. That's the difference between aiCMO and, using ChatGPT, for example. It's a generic, it depends on how good of a prompter you are and how much work you're willing to do, but it's also personalized. You can't really just easily transfer that. So this is a fantastic way to maintain that consistency long term. Nothing worse than a customer feeling like they come back to do business with you and they feel like they're doing business with an entirely different company. It happens all the time. And in most cases, nothing changed except the marketing team changed or people left, and it just doesn't resonate the same way. That's a big risk a lot of brands take that you can normalize with aiCMO.
All right, next time we're going to dig into finding the human truth behind your brand. So tapping into empathy and identity to uncover deep relevance. Until then, keep marketing with purpose and scaling with meaning. Thanks for listening to the Bliss Business Podcast.